As a small business owner, you know that time is a precious commodity. It can feel like there are not enough hours in the day to juggle everything on your to-do list. However, in marketing, taking an omni-channel approach can be a time-saving and sanity-saving exercise. Taking an omni-channel approach to your marketing is something that we've mentioned pretty often here on the Mad Marketing Mums. Putting all your eggs in one basket by using just one channel for your marketing, while very convenient, has so many risks and disadvantages. So, how do you create an omni-channel marketing approach for your business? And how can it save you time and your sanity while also growing your business in the long run? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. In today's episode, we are joined by Clare Wood, a numbers nerd, ex-CPA accountant, and host of the Clare Wood Podcast. She's a drinker of wine and a wrangler of 2 boys and a traveler, as well as a money mentor coach. Clare will be sharing how she grew her business using her podcast, Instagram, and email list. Whether you're a solopreneur or you run a team, this episode is definitely for you. So grab a pen and paper, get ready to take notes, and please welcome Clare Wood.
Hello. Thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Oh, thanks. Took 2 goes, but I got there in the end.
Claire, it's so lovely to have you here. I've been following you for quite some time on Instagram, and obviously been listening to your podcast as well. But tell us a little bit more about yourself, maybe the things that we wouldn't necessarily know from the outside looking in.
Oh, that's a great question. Well, my first job, one of my first jobs in uni was that I used to work for a head lice company.
Oh my God.
This is such a random tangent.
Side note, head lice videos on TikTok are actually kind of soothing. Let me tell you.
Oh my gosh.
You can pop them under the comb and you're like, yes.
It's making me itchy talking about this.
That is tangent number 1 for this episode.
Excellent.
Well, I was a poor uni student. I was studying my undergrad accounting degree, and someone offered me this job on $19 an hour, which at the time, that was crazy money. And I was like, yeah, can I keep my clothes on for this job? And they said, yeah, you're just checking kids for head lice and putting treatments on them. I was like, I can do that. My head is now itching even telling the story. So I used to go around to schools. I'd check if kids had head lice, and then I'd contact the parents, get approval, and then put treatments on children. And that was one of my first jobs. And I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Aside from the itch, it was actually a really easy job. So yeah, that's a fact that I haven't really shared before.
And actually a really important business lesson, because it's the people who are willing to do the things that others aren't who tend to be successful. And, that applies with your marketing as well. The people who aren't afraid to show up and show their face or to deal with the head lice, that are the ones who tend to see the success. So I think that may have, inadvertently set you up for the success that you've been having in your business today.
100%. I mean, there's a pricing lesson in it, which is that, all pricing is what you are willing to do something for and what someone is willing to pay you for it. And I think that's something really important to consider when it comes to setting your prices. It's like there's no right or wrong. It's like, is that a fair energetic exchange for you? And is that a fair energetic exchange for them? And for me, I thought I had hit the jackpot there.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah, and $19 an hour was a lot of money. Like, if I feel like we're similar ages, like back when we're sort of at uni, amazing. You would have just been so happy. And it gives you a great story to talk about, right? Which is always lots of fun. So in terms of obviously the business you have now, take us through that, because it's not quite as, gruesome. It's a little bit more palatable these days.
Well, maybe it looks like that from the outside, but in many ways, putting head lice treatments on kids was a lot easier. I love my business. I love what I do. But as you ladies would know, running your own business isn't always the gloss that you see on Instagram. And there's certainly been a lot of ups and downs in my business journey over the years. But the primary thing, like I love coaching. I love mentoring people, and I love helping them have their big income breakthroughs or hit their big goals. And for me, that is worth the pain of the of the discomfort that I have to go through, that I have gone through in many different ways. And I love that you touched on that before, talking about, what people are willing to do. And I know in my early days of business, I had such a fear of showing up in my marketing, which you wouldn't know now looking at me on Instagram, right? I'm doing lives, I'm putting myself out there, but I've pushed through a lot of discomfort to get to where I am today. And and I'm very, very grateful to be doing what I do.
So, can you take us, since we're back in the beginning of your business, can you take us like through the steps that you took to, I guess, build this omni-channel system that you've created?
Yeah, absolutely. So the early days of my business, I ran everything on the smell of an oily rag. I'm an accountant, so it was like, don't spend money on anything. I was so proud. I had 5 clients that were each paying me $1,000 a month. And I think I was spending next to nothing. I originally had hired a business coach for $1,000 a month. And then once I learned how to sell, how to close clients, I closed that off. So nearly all of my revenue was profit. And I thought I was a genius. I'm like, look at how much margin I'm making. But then what I noticed was that I started to look at all of my peers, like people who'd started their business about the same time as me in the same industry. And they were talking about making a couple of $100,000 a year, $1 million a year. And I was like, whoa, I want to make that kind of money. So I looked at what they were doing, and this is a great hint, at any stage of business, look at what the people who you want to, be achieving, what are they doing? And the thing that I noticed was that they were showing up in their marketing a lot more. They had podcasts, they had nice websites, they had, beautiful branding. They were showing up consistently in their marketing. They were talking to the camera and allowing their potential clients to build a connection with them through social media. And I realized that I could either stay in my comfort zone, making a pretty good profit, or I could do things differently. And so that's the path that I chose to take. I invested money into my business, which was uncomfortable as hell for a tight ass accountant like me. I up-leveled my branding. I pushed through so much discomfort to show up in my marketing. And I also launched my podcast, which, as I was sharing with you ladies off air, has just hit 200 episodes. And
Yay! It's so good.
Congratulations.
So
thank
good.
you. And I don't have massive following on social media. I don't have a massive email list. I don't have a massive listenership on my podcast per se, compared to some of the other people. But I do have a really, really deep connection. I've been able to build my business. My conversion rate with my audience is so big because I have such a deep level of trust with those inside my community. And because I do have that omni-channel approach, people are reading my emails, they're listening to my podcast, they're following me on social media, and seeing that consistent messaging across all of the platforms. And I think this is something that people get so, you say it again and again, but people get so hooked on the number of followers or, how many people on your email list. I'm like, it doesn't matter if they're not buying off you. I have an incredibly high open rate of my emails because I show up and create content that's really interesting and engaging. And people tell me, I love to open your emails each week. So I think this is something really important to remember as well, is that, like, what is the intent of doing something? Do you want to be TikTok famous and be making no money? Or do you want to be building a business that is profitable, building a loyal following and building clients that buy from you again and again and again?
Excellent. And that, yeah, preach. Total preach, right? It's all about what's happening off of these platforms that really matters in the end. I'm just going to take a quick step back for our listeners who may be unfamiliar with the term omni-channel marketing. We probably should have started back there, but that's cool. We'll circle back. So for those people who aren't familiar with this term, how would you describe it, Claire?
I think it's basically like having multiple different marketing channels. It's something that I preach about. It's something I wrote about in my book as well, because, again, we were just talking off air about how there's talk that TikTok might be banned in a couple of countries. Imagine your whole business was on TikTok. You'd be sweating bullets right now.
There's a huge percentage of businesses that just rely on TikTok.
100%.
And so many gurus saying that it's still the be all and end all of your business and marketing.
And all you have to do, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, one of my primary platforms is Instagram, but Instagram's gone down a few times. Instagram changes their algorithm and suddenly holy smokes, oh, I don't own this. They could shut it down tomorrow. And those followers, those relationships are gone, which is why I am really intentional about getting people to connect with me in other ways, to come listen to my podcast, to go get on my email list. I offer freebies. This is a tip that I do on my Instagram stories a couple of times a week. I'm like, go grab my freebie, go download this, trying to get people off that platform and onto a platform that I own.
Yeah.
So to me, it's really about building different relationships on different platforms, but they all cohesively come together and people have a very similar experience with your brand across multiple different platforms.
Now, quick question about your freebies. Do you constantly create a new freebie, or do you have like a core set and you go through like every couple of months you have that same freebie that you offered a few months back that you re-offer?
So in my early days of business, I don't know if you remember Amy Porterfield, many years ago, every podcast episode she'd be creating a new freebie, and I was doing the same thing. So I have a bank. I'm sure there's like over 100 freebies in there. However, a lot of them aren't really relevant to my business and what I deliver today. So I do create fresh freebies all the time. I get a bit bored. I really need to be proud of the things that I'm offering and putting out there. But I also think there is a lot of power in not doing what I used to do and creating a new freebie every bloody week, because it's confusing for your audience. It creates logistical nightmares as well, because what I found with people downloading my old freebies, I'm like, I don't even know what they get sent. Like, are they getting a welcome email? Do they get the email? And then if I want to go and create a new sequence, I have to attach it to every one of those 100 things, because God knows I mentioned in a podcast a couple of years ago and someone will go and download it. So I think there's power in both. I personally don't love having just one freebie, because I think if that doesn't resonate for people, then you're not going to get them on your list. So I do have a few at any one point in time, but I would also probably advise against doing what I used to do, because it's a bloody nightmare.
Yeah. And yeah, you would have to have so many different funnels and tags and things. And then you'll have people downloading all of your freebies and all these different sequences. I mean, they could be receiving their multiple emails from you a day, right? And it's just, yes. But I love the point you made that you were sharing your freebies a few times a week. And I think that's a really great reminder for our listeners who maybe have a freebie. The question is, when was the last time you spoke about that freebie and shared it? Because I think sometimes we make these things and we pop them out and we share them a bit and then we forget about them and we forget to share them again. So this is your prompt for this week. Share your freebie today. Go create a quick little Instagram story about it, post it on your Facebook page, wherever you like to hang out online, TikTok while it's still here. But share that because, like Claire said, that's what she's doing and it's working for her, so it may just work for you as well. Now, Claire, before you decided on this omni-channel marketing approach, what did you need to do beforehand? Was there some work or some research that you kind of had to do before you decided on this approach or before you actually started taking action?
So many years ago, I invested to do a session with a coach. You may know her. Her business used to be Stevie Says Social, and she used to do one-on-one coaching sessions. And I did a session with her, and she said to me, "You've got to create a podcast." And I was like, I don't have time for a podcast. It's so much effort. I'm not a great speaker. I stumble over my words. I've got a horrible Queensland accent. And she said to me, it's just such a deeper way to build trust with your audience. And even after I'd recorded my first couple of episodes, I nearly didn't launch it because I thought, I've got a horrible accent. And anyway, long story short, it went to be the number 2 business podcast in Australia. I've built so many connections, relationships, clients throughout the years through my podcast. So I'm so glad I did that. So that came from a piece of advice from someone who I'd invested to work with. Getting people on my email list has just always been a priority for me. Your email list is just the most important thing. And also keeping it really lean. I've had to do a couple of culls over the years that have killed me. Anyone that's ever had to do this, where you cull inact people on your email list and you think, I worked so hard and now I'm getting rid of thousands of people off my list.
But it's good. It's beneficial in the long run.
100%. Every time I do it, my open rate massively increases. It's telling your email platform that you are creating interesting content. And social media has become something that I push through, again, the discomfort of primarily from looking at what my peers were doing. I'm like, why is she making all that money and I'm not? And I'm like, well, she's showing up on Instagram all the time. She's talking to the camera. She's got this beautiful brand. And so that's why I shifted into really making sure that I was being consistent in my social media as well. So I definitely think there's so much power in having, you know, an omni-channel strategy, but also that each channel you're being true to what that channel is about. So I don't
Yes.
just pick up my podcast, transcribe it and stick it in an email and send it out. It's about, you know, using similar content or using the content, repurposing it, but doing it in a tailored way to a platform. And this is why for TikTok, I don't want to just post my Instagram videos across to TikTok. I really want to think about what that platform is about, and while using similar strategies and techniques to modify it and be true to a specific platform.
Excellent. And yes, we both know Stevie. The reason we are here today is because I did Stevie's course on creating a podcast, and I've done Launchpad with her as well. So thanks, Stevie. Shout out to Stevie and the Course Cartel for bringing us all together today, which is incredible. But I really love what you were saying there about not only just looking at what other people are doing, but instead of falling then into this, doom scrolling cycle of self-hatred and going, oh, why have they, why is it working for them? The algorithm's out to get me, rah-de-rah-de-rah. You went, okay, well, what are they actually doing? Okay, well, what can I try for myself? And you actually took action based off of that. And I think, it's really easy for us to fall into that comparisonitis kind of sinkhole that we see if you're on social media all the time like we are, right? Sometimes it's really hard to step back and look at things objectively, but it's about, okay, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. And taking, I guess, what they're doing and making it apply for yourself. So I love that. That's so great. And clearly it's worked, right? Clearly it's worked for you, which is incredible.
Have you, now that you've created this system, Claire, is there one medium that you find that you prefer a lot more? And now that you have that experience, it just takes zero time to do for you?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, my most challenging platform, I might start there and then go expand from there, but I really struggle creating my solo podcast episodes to this day. I'm not sure why. I do Instagram lives every single week. I make it a consistent thing where every single Thursday I go live on Instagram and I can talk for 20 minutes, half an hour with no prompts. Put me in front of the microphone to do my solo podcast episodes. I'm a stumbling, bumbling mess. I think because I know it's pre-recorded. I love doing interviews. I love doing interviews on the podcast. Super easy. I really enjoy it, both being interviewed and interviewing people. And my Instagram was a platform that I used to hate. Every time my husband would come in and see me crying, he's like, are you trying to film a video for the Instagram again? Like, yeah, I can't do it and I look stupid and I can't talk. And now it's so natural and organic. Even when I traveled over Christmas and people said, why were you still posting? And I was like, oh, yeah, I do it without even really thinking. I just capture moments. I share stories. I want to empower and educate my audience when I think of things. So that's become a really, really easy and organic platform for me. My email list, I've actually got a little hack, which I can share with the listeners if we have the moment.
Yes, please.
But basically, I write my my newsletter in 20 minutes, and within half an hour, it's tested and sent. And the way that I do that is that I prepare the content in my head beforehand. So while I'm having a shower, I'm like, what do I want to say to my audience today? And I'm like, oh, I should tell them the story about when I was in Vietnam and how I was backpacking and had no money. And so I've prepped a lot of it in my head. And then I just sit down and I write an email as if I was writing it to one of you two, just like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And I just write it. I just tell a story like I was writing it. And I used to overthink my newsletters. I'd try and structure. And now I'm just like, Claire, you've got 20 minutes, write it. And that's literally how I write my regular emails, even during my launch content. It's just something that I just sit down, tell a story, and then say, hey, and if I have an offer, hey, and I've also got this thing that might be able to help you. And so I just stop overthinking everything. Stop overthinking the email, stop overthinking the social media content, because you get better in time. You get better the more that you practice. And in the early days, when back in the coffee cup days, I'd sit there trying to take a photo of my coffee for Instagram, being like, oh, hashtag living. And I used to overthink it so much. And now I'm like, I just post. And the last thing that I want to add to this, sorry, I know I'm rambling on, but I'm sharing this from a place of really trying to give your audience as much value as possible, is really getting super clear on who you are, how you're different to everyone else, and what's your why. And when I was in my early days of social media content, I used to probably copy people a bit. Looking for inspo, and then I'd be like, oh, what if I tell a story about a business plan just like that person is? And when you really start to step into your own, I find now that if I'm starting to get too inspired by someone's content, that things I immediately mute their stories and their posts, because I really want to be really unique. I want to be creating my own intellectual property. I want to be positioning myself as, as different to everyone else. So I think that's the other thing that I would say. Get really, really clear on who you are, what you do, how you help people. And then the more that you come back to that, the more that you'll really start to stand out as a leader online rather than a copycat.
And look, I think this ties back really nicely to our episode with Holly Cardamone, episode 15, if you haven't listened to it, where we spoke about content pillars, but also what you want to be known for. And taking that time to get that really, really clear makes that content flow. You kind of already know what kind of key messages you want to get out, what you want people to know about you, your brand, your business, yourself personally. I love that 20-minute time limit. I think that is great. It's like the Pomodoro technique, but only that's 25, isn't it? This could be the Clare technique, right?
What is this Pomodoro technique that you're talking about? Because I'm thinking about pasta now and I'm hungry.
Yes, because Pomodoro means tomato, right? And so it's from the tomato festival in Spain where they throw all the tomatoes at each other. And so, but there's a technique where you set a timer for 25 minutes and just work, no distractions. And then when it stops, you can have a small break and then you come back. And working in those short, really focused sessions can help you achieve a lot. So yes, and in this case, Claire's shaved 5 minutes off hers. Like her tomato's really lean. But yeah, it's a pretty famous technique. And because I have a cute little timer that I use for this. Look, and it's really visual, so you can see when your time's coming down.
So to describe the clock, it's got a red section.
You'll have to go to YouTube.
Imagine a red section as you turn the clock.
Exactly, a little like stopwatch, but it's red, and then the red gets smaller and smaller. I'm not describing this at all. You'll have to go check it out. Maybe we'll pop it on our stories so people can see this clock that Krishna's talking about. But yeah, I love that, and I love that you're doing that for your email marketing, because so many people create an email list and then they don't send them anything because they don't know what to send them. And you spend all this time getting people onto your list and then you're not even communicating with them because you're overthinking it or trying. One mistake I see is people trying to put every single thing that they want to talk about and sell into one email. Whereas if you just think, okay, I'm going to talk about this one thing this week, one thing next week, it gives you a lot more content and makes it a bit easier as well.
I had a side question. I think that's not even written down as well. So you have 3 channels. How easy would it be for you to add a 4th one?
It's interesting. I've been umming and ahhing a lot about moving into the space of TikTok. I'm one of those people that if I commit to something, I really want to go in and say, I'm going to give this a big shot, because if you jump on every latest trend without being mindful about creating a sustainable, like if I posted 5 episodes of my podcast and then stopped and was like, podcasting's a waste of time. Well, obviously it's a waste, because you can't expect a pop-up miracle. I have to admit, Clubhouse was something I jumped on, popped up, I was there all the time, and now I'm like, well, that was a colossal waste of I once sat on a call for 3 hours waiting to ask a question for from someone. But, I think that now I'm a lot more mindful. How's this going to fit in? Is it something that I can sustainably show up on? And how's this all going to fit in together into my overarching strategy? And like I said, I don't want to just be sharing the same stuff across multiple platforms. Because from my experience, it doesn't really work if you're just posting the same stuff to different platforms. So I could absolutely add something else in. I'm also really conscious about being aware of my time. In 2020, I really got burnt out. I was coaching like a mad woman. I was podcasting. I was doing all of these things. And I remember one day I did 4 sessions. I did a 6 to 9, a 9 to 12, a 1 to 4, and then a 6 to 9 coaching sessions in one day. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not seeing my kids. I'm not feeling at all excited, expanded anymore. And so now I'm trying to be a lot more strategic about my time, being intentional with the way that I'm growing my business. So yes, I do think that I could create more, but I really would want to do it in a very considered and mindful way rather than just like, oh my gosh, Clubhouse is here. Let's go and jump on that. Really thinking about, do I have the bandwidth for this? What does that look like? And how can I grow my business in a way that feels great for me?
Yeah.
Because this is
Rest in
only
peace, Clubhouse. Yeah.
It's still around.
I know.
It's just all the bros that are hanging out on it.
I know, exactly. Who's hanging out there? I know. Well, it does sound like you're juggling a lot of different things at once. So I guess what we'd like to know is, how is this omni-channel approach actually helping you in terms of saving time and, of course, your sanity as well?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about being across multiple platforms is that you do have this loyalty. And, I really do feel like I can, if I say, okay, I want to create something new, I can reach out to my audience and say, hey, I've got this thing that I think will really help you. And because I have been so consistent, this is something I bang on and on and on about, but choose to be consistent with your marketing. My audience knows that every single Thursday I show up and do a live every Thursday morning. They know that every single week they get at least one email from me. They know that I am on Instagram. If I didn't show up on Instagram for a week, I think people would DM me asking me if I'm okay, because I'm so consistent with the way that I show up there. And I think that this is what I would say is that being consistent builds trust and loyalty with your audience. So when you have got that following, when you have got those relationships, you are in the driver's seat of your business. When you own your marketing, when you know what levers to pull, when you say, hey, I could go and create something and make some money straight away, it's a really cool and empowering feeling. And something that I see is that a lot of people don't have that ability because they haven't been consistent across their various platforms. So I guess that's the thing that I would say is that keep showing up. Even if you don't have anything that you're trying to sell, add value, show up, talk to your audience, because then when you do, they're there, they're ready to buy. They can see how much you can help them and support them. So yeah, it's definitely been fantastic for me. I have my coaching, which is at a really premium price point. And the reason why I'm able to sell it at that point is, again, because I've shown up and I've delivered and people have that trust with me and my brand. So that would be my tip. And that's the advantage. That's why you do it.
So can you take us through, I guess, where does the cycle start? Do you get like a core idea and you're like, I'm going to do a podcast episode on that, and then you branch off of that with some Instagram content and then, some email content that hints at it, and then followed by one about the podcast once it's published? Like, can you take us through that cycle of where's the start of that omni-channel and where does it come and loop back?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a marketing calendar, like a day-by-day calendar that maps out my promotional periods. And this is something that I think is a really great thing for everyone to do. But because you spoke before about when we're talking about too many things at once, it gets a bit confusing. I feel a little bit like I'm doing that at the moment because I'm talking about my book and my book launch. But I think the biggest thing is okay, what am I talking about for this period of time? Now, I am launching my new course next month, and I am already starting to plant little seeds through my content now. So I'm not promoting it. I haven't even mentioned it, but I'm starting to plant seeds about the power of mindset, about check out what can be done with your mindset. I'm starting to give a lot more mindset tips. And so I bring my audience on the journey where by the time when I'm like, hey, I've got this thing, they're like, I need some help with my mindset. Oh my gosh, you're right. I've been watching your content. And so this is what I do with my content. And then when I launch my other course, which is about, it's about business finance I know that doesn't sound very sexy, but basically it's teaching the basics of accounting. And you'll then notice that my content almost overnight when I close the doors, you'll notice that suddenly I'm talking about cash flow and about finances and about all of the things, and I'm prepping my audience for the next thing that I'm about to be selling. And this is what I do. So it always comes back to my promotional calendar for me. And then off the back of it, I think, what are the key things that people need to know to be ready to buy this thing, invest in this thing, whatever. So for instance, when I launched my retreat, all of my content was showing people, hey, this is why I have such cool business friends the reason the launch of my book is such a success, because I know all these really well-known entrepreneurs. And the reason that I've been able to get in the room with these people is because I paid for it. I've met them at retreats. I've met them at networking events. So I'm prepping my audience, getting them thinking about the next thing before I've even mentioned, hey, I've got a retreat coming. So what I do with my content off the back of that is I go, okay, what do I need to do? I need to tell them, hey, you need to get in the room with the right people. And then I'll go, what's a great podcast topic that I could do around that? What's a great Instagram live that I could do around that? What's a story that I can tell in my email to my list this week? And so for me, it all comes, what's the promotion? And then how do I bring people on that journey across my various platforms? And I actually love creating a different topic for my Instagram live, a different topic for my podcast, because then I can weave that all back into my email. I can cross share that across different platforms. So that's for me what I do. It's my content is very intentional. It's bringing people on a journey, getting them ready to buy basically, and adding value in the process. I'm not just sharing like you've got to go buy my thing, but I'm saying here's some value, here's how this is important, giving people tips, tricks along the way. And then, hey, if you want some help with that, I've also got this really cool thing. So for me, it all comes back to my marketing calendar and my promotional plan.
So how long from, say, planning to execution does it take you, I guess, to do this? Because I mean, by the sounds of it, this is like this. We all know it's a long game. I guess the step of planning. How do you set aside a day, a month to do that, and then do you batch your content for that, or like I know for some of your Instagram stuff, you're obviously spontaneous, like your lives and some of your content, but like this sounds like there's chess pieces on the board and you know exactly where they need to move and how long it's going to take them to move them there. So how long does it take you to plan that and how long does it take you to execute?
Well, I'm glad it looks like that from the outside.
It looks like that in my head.
So what I do sit down with one of my team members every fortnight and we map out a fortnight of content. So we think, okay, what are the key messages we need to get across? What's the money talk? What's the podcast episode going to be? And we look at that a fortnight in advance. My OBM Leah, she hates me because I am also a very, like my entrepreneurial spirit. If I then go, oh my gosh, I want to share a message about this, I don't want to follow what's in the social media marketing plan. So as much as I have that there, I do kind of tend to, I might go, I really feel inspired to share this story, or hey, I just filmed this really cool thing down the beach. I want to do that, or this audio is trending. I need to jump on that now. So I always have a fortnight of content there. But a lot of the time I will mix it up. But I come back like to my plan. I go, I could pull that. I could post about that today. But it's always very, very strategic. Like I'm not just slapping stuff up for the sake of it. I am being very intentional with my marketing and saying, I know this is the next thing. I need to start planting the seeds now. I need to start teasing the next thing. And again, I would say that this is one of my biggest marketing tips to people. My biggest launches, my most successful things in business have always been where I've teased and teased and teased and teased and teased and teased. And like my book, I teased that for 18 months. I was showing me, hey, I'm doing a session writing my book. This is me writing my book. Did I mention that I'm writing a book? I really was bringing people on the journey so much that when I finally posted about it, everyone wanted to go and grab it. And it's the same, I would say, with anything that you are launching. Don't just one day be like, I've got a course, and then wonder why no one's bought it because they didn't even know you had a course. And suddenly they're like, what's in the course? I don't know if I want the course. So I would really think, how can I prepare my audience in advance and get them ready to be able to buy?
Excellent. Oh, that sounds so good. And I love that you go rogue too sometimes because that's absolutely me. But I say this to my students because sometimes they have a lot of resistance to this idea of pre-planning because they're like, no, I want to be in the moment. I want to be spontaneous. I'm like, you're here working with me because you can't be consistent, because you struggle with that. So let's plan it. And if on the day when your scheduled post was going to go out, you come up with a really brilliant, timely idea, or there's something in the news that you really want to talk about, pull that, slot that into next week. And it gives you that planning, gives you the flexibility to be spontaneous. Because if something doesn't come up, that's cool. You've got your regularly scheduled content, out it goes, you're being consistent, you're doing all the things you want. So I love hearing that you were doing that as well. Yeah, I mean, it keeps you consistent, but you can still be spontaneous. You can still do like in the moment kind of fun things. But then if you don't, or if you get sick, that's, I think a really good reason for planning in advance. And I like the 2-week window as well. I think that's really works really nicely. At least you know it's covered then, and you can relax and you can rest. Because I don't know about you, in the early days of my business, it was a hot mess. And, I'd be like, on my deathbed trying to type out a post or whatever, because I'm like, I need to post today. So just having that ready to go means you can just take the foot off the gas, rest if you need to. If you're just having a bad mental health day and you need to lie in bed all afternoon, I've spoken about this before, sometimes I need to do that. That's, it's fine. Your content's already covered. So yes. Okay, one final, I guess, formal question for you, Claire, and then we've got some fun little quick fire ones for you. So I think this all sounds great. Loving this whole approach. And I'm sure Clem, I'm going to speak for the both of us here, like we both think this is, the right way to do things. I say in inverted commas, there's not one right way, but having these different channels that you're using and having them work together for you, and of course not relying on one channel, because we know that social media channels can be taken away at any moment. If someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, I want to do this, but I've got no budget, what would you say to them? How can they build out an approach like you've done here? Is it going to cost them a lot of money?
Yeah. So the big thing that I would say, we are very, very lucky in today's day and age to have social media, which is free. It's a free platform for the most part. And so I would say start showing up. And the other thing that I'm such a big believer in, sorry, back to my dorky accounting roots, is making a plan. So for me, when I am mapping out my finances, my marketing, I am looking ahead and saying, okay, I know I've got this revenue coming in. What can I do? How can I invest that? And if I'm going through a bit of a tight cash flow period, I rein back my marketing spend. I go, you know what? For example, when I did my new website, it cost me about $15,000. And a part of the way through, I was like, whoa, I might need to delay this a little bit. And being in the driver's seat with your finances, being able to say, okay, let's do that, or let's move that around. Or alternatively, let's create a new offer. Let's bring in some more money so that we can afford to invest. But I think if you say that you don't have money to do your marketing, I think that's just lazy. I'm just going to throw it out there. You can still show up. You can still do things without spending a lot of money. And, there are plenty of people who built 6-figure businesses with no website, with no, Facebook ads. It's really like, well, what resources do you have available to you? How can you leverage those? And then from there you go, okay, cool. Now I'm ready to start to invest into paid platforms and strategies. So I think it's just start where you are. I'm not one of those people that's like, go and mortgage your house and, spend $50,000 on Facebook ads. I say, work with what you've got, do what you can, and then be intentional. Say, okay, when I hit that amount of money, if I reach out and get a quote about something, I'm like, okay, awesome. I've got that. I really want to do that. When I hit this metric, I will go and reach out and say, okay, we're ready to go. But I don't just go and spend money for the sake of it. I'm really, really intentional. I'm looking at my cash flow and being mindful about my investments. And that's what I'd really recommend to people as well, is that, just be across your finances.
I think kind of what you're saying is plan.
Yeah.
we've come full circle now. It's all about the planning. And even with, I have to slightly disagree. Social media isn't free. There's no such thing as a free lunch, but that's just my opinion. They do take your data and whatnot, but I'm not going to go down that tangent. But you're right. If you don't have a budget, you still have time, and it's worth then taking that time to plan so that you end up strengthening your marketing across your social channels. And like you said, with planning your finances and such, I mean, with some of my clients, what we've done to do a more of a holistic omni-channel approach is taking, say, a TikTok video, getting that transcribed, using that for the basis of a blog so that we can send out those emails, that whole cycle. But that takes planning. It really, really does. And it does save them their sanity. But when it comes down to, say, that budget, we know then exactly like how much each one of these platforms is going to cost, but we also are able to calculate how much time it's going to save us. And then we know exactly which ones we want to invest in first and foremost. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head where it is very much all about planning and choosing which channel is your strongest one in terms of the easiest to create, the most fun to create with, because then you're going to look so much more natural on it, I think, compared to if you start with one that you're not really sure about, you're kind of nervous, it's all about being yourself and being your true authentic self, even though I hate that word. Can't stand that word. But if you look more natural, it's going to be easier. Then everything's going to start to fall into place a little bit more easily. And then eventually you'll be able to buy all those platforms to automate.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And you want to have fun doing this, right?
Yeah.
This should be the fun part of your business. There's so many parts that maybe aren't so fun, but showing up, chatting with your audience, helping them with, wherever they're at in that customer journey, that should be fun. That should be enjoyable for you if you love what it is that you do. If it's not fun, maybe there's some other questions to be asking yourself,
Well, I just want to throw a bit of a different lens on this because I personally think that there is discomfort in change. And for example, I'm loving sitting here having this conversation with you. But when I had my first podcast, I had a panic attack. I had to stop recording. I was so nervous. Talking on a podcast was so overwhelming and unnatural for me. And now it's so natural. I love podcasting, maybe not my solo episodes yet, but a lot of the things that I love posting on Instagram is so fun for me. I would do it if I wasn't running a business. In the start, I hated that. And there is kind of this period where I believe you do need to get a bit uncomfortable. And yes, it's figuring out how to make it fun. But for me, honestly, it took years until I got comfortable with a lot of these things. And now I'm like, it's ridiculous to me that I wouldn't love posting on Instagram. I love it. I love podcasting now, which felt so unnatural to me in the early days. So I do think, like, I definitely take on board what you say about it being fun, but I also do encourage people that, sometimes you are going to have to get a little bit uncomfortable to shift to where you want to be.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a few quick fire questions for you, Claire. Before we do, tell our listeners where they can get more Claire, where they can connect with you online, and of course, where we can find your book. Now, am I correct in saying that it's out for pre-order at the moment, or can we actually get the book now?
So as of Friday the 17th of March, the book is available. Those of you that have pre-ordered will get copies, but my book is called Intentional Profit. It's already a best-selling book across 2 different categories, women in business and accounting. So it's called Intentional Profit, and you can buy it on Amazon, Booktopia, Barnes & Noble, Audible, not Audible yet, but it will be coming very soon, and Kindle. So anywhere that you buy books online, have a look for my book. It's there. I'm also on social media at Clare_Wood_coach. If you want to come and say hello, I'm very active on Instagram. And I also have my podcast, which I very creatively called the Clare Wood Podcast. There's some marketing genius for you right there.
Excellent. And of course, we will link to all of those in the show notes. So if you're out and about listening to this and you can't write it down or look those websites up, obviously you can go back and grab them there. Okay, Claire, few questions for you here. Tell us, who is your favorite creator or one of your favorite creators, because you've probably got a few on Instagram. Who are you really loving at the moment and just consuming all of their content?
I follow Rebel Nutrition, and I used to get super triggered by her. I was like, it's just showy, it's just flashy. And now she's someone that I'm like, this woman is onto something. I love following her. Denise Duffield Thomas is, one of my early mentors. I've loved her from the very start of my business journey. And Yeah, who else am I loving? Oh, Manifestation Babe is another person that's content I find super, super inspiring. But again, I used to find really triggering. And I think that's something interesting as well. Like that if someone's triggering you, you can ask yourself why. And, sometimes I mute people for a while and then later I come back to the content. I'm like, oh, I'm loving this. I'm finding it super inspiring. So those are a couple of the big names that I'm looking at the moment.
Oh, excellent. I haven't heard
Mm.
of Rebel Nutrition before, so I'm going to have to go and look that up. Denise, love Denise. Like everything she says. We had a really big trip to Central Australia last year, and on the way home, we ended up just deciding to do a 7-hour drive, the kids in the car. But I just binged her podcast basically that entire time. And now I just feel like I know her and her voice so well. And that little catchy theme song she has at the start of her podcast.
Yep.
Well, I'll link to it in the show notes as well so you can go and have a listen. But yeah, 7 hours of Denise in my head. Like, I feel like, yeah, I really know her now. Excellent. Okay, thank you for those. I'm going to look those up. And again, I'll pop them in the show notes for our listeners.
So, next quick fire question. What is the best piece of advice you could give for parents in business?
Ooh, get help. Get help, I would say. This might be a little bit triggering for people, but I need to share honestly. I have a cleaner that comes twice a week. Our cleaner comes and does a big bunch of folding, cleans. I have a lot of support from my partner as well. It's been a journey. But when two people are living in a house together, there's roles that need to be split. And so we take turns dropping the kids off, picking the kids up, doing various things around the house. So I would definitely say that support is my biggest tip. If you aren't at a stage to invest in paid support yet, what can you do? Can you do swaps with people? Can you ask people for help? I've worked with single mums over the years and, it's like, can you do swaps with friends? Can you ask family members? But really setting yourself up for success. In the early days, I used to have a cleaner came once a month, maybe, or once a fortnight for 2 hours just to do the bathrooms. And now my cleaner comes for 4 hours one day, 5 hours another day, twice a week. And
Amazing.
I still don't feel like I've got my house is clean enough. Amazing. I still need more.
I know, right? Well, if you've got children living there, it's like my kids, we have a cleaner only once a fortnight because I said to my husband, this is cheaper than a divorce. But I'll tell you, the moment the kids get home, within half an hour, there are cracker crumbs all over the clean floors. It drives me crazy. But I'm so lucky that, even to be able to afford that, because I just personally hate cleaning so much. I just hate it because it's a job that's never finished.
Yeah.
And that just really, I don't know, it triggers me that you'll clean something, then you turn around and it's messy again. This is something that I really struggle with. And of course, when you have kids, that's amplified, that mess and noise. So yes, I'm glad you suggested that. And amazing that you're able to do that. But
I'm gonna keep my cleaning stories to myself this morning and empty toilet paper roll
on the
holder with the toilet paper just underneath it. Why? Anyway,
that's a whole other podcast episode.
I know, right?
I could share many stories too.
Yes. I know. We need like a side podcast where it's just complaining about our
mad marketing mums at night, after like a wine.
After hours. Yeah. Okay. Final little question to wrap this up. And that is, what is your 2023 content marketing prediction? What do you think we're going to be seeing more of online, whether that's Instagram or one of these other platforms that you have been using?
I think that AI is going to be crazy, like transforming the online space. I think that it's going to be a really interesting time to watch how people are using it and to see how, it affects people's, I hate that word as well, but authenticity online. Really, I think it will be a very, very interesting line. And I also do think that as we continue to have, a lot happening in terms of people, the call out culture and things like that. I think that it's going to be a really, really interesting time to observe how people are starting to create more inclusive businesses and seeing how that kind of all plays out over time.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to see AI like leaps and bounds now, especially with ChatGPT has opened up their AI so that can get plugged into any platform at this point.
there are a whole lot of different versions, or not of ChatGPT itself, but a whole lot of these
of AI
different
prompts,
tools now, right? So I just really hope that we're not then going to see heaps of generic, obviously written by AI captions and content, because that makes it boring. You know, as a consumer of content, you want to see people. So I think, if you want to stand out online, in amongst all of this, that I think we're going to start seeing a lot more, being yourself, showing up, doing those lives like Clare does, is going to be the way to cut through that, because I suspect we might end up with more noise, at least in the initial stages, before people start going, yuck, I can tell that this is AI.
Yeah.
I'm not interested.
100%.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Clare. It has been an absolute pleasure having you here. As I said before, we'll link to all of Clare's goodies and her book, which will be out by the time this episode goes live. So you'll be able to go over and get that wherever you like to purchase books. I do mine online now because I got sick of having just stacks of books all over my house. So everything I do is now on my iPad in terms of books. So I'll be going and finding that and downloading. But yeah, so wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Clare.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's been a wonderful chat. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.